Today we're going to talk about ball position with every single club in your bag. Today we're going to talk about ball position, and I want to get straight to it because this is a problem I see with so many golfers is they just have an incorrect ball position. But what you need to understand about ball position is that it has everything to do not only with the position of the ball between your feet, but it has to do with stance width. And this is where a lot of people make the mistake, is they are trying to get the proper ball position with a club in their bag and their stance is not wide enough or it's too narrow for the club that they're hitting. The thing about ball position is that it can affect good golf swings. You can have a great golf swing, make a really nice path, have the club on plane, have the club face nice and square, and the ball position could be off in the bottom of the golf swing and the club face will not line up and squarely hit the ball to the target. So we have to talk about the two most important elements, which are where is the ball positioned and what is the width of the stance. You're going to see this on the ground here almost every time that I practice. When I'm working on my golf swing, this is my alignment and ball position trainer. And I'm not sitting here trying to sell you a device, a training aid, but I made this thing so simple and so easy to use because I want to use this. I don't want it to be complicated for you to figure out ball position. What this is allowing me to do, and I'll show you a picture of this, what this allows you to do is have your foot position correct, have the ball position correct for the club that you're hitting, and then adjust your trail foot, because really the biggest adjustment you're going to have in your ball position is the trail foot width. Now, let's start with the wedges first. Now, I'm not going to go through every single club. I'll go through short irons. I'll go wedges, short irons, mid irons, long irons, hybrids, then wood. So we're going to go through a little bit of almost every club in the bag. But let's talk about, this is my 52-degree wedge, and you could go into even if I'm hitting a swing full with a sand wedge or a wedge, obviously this is one of the shortest clubs in my bag. Now, what you're going to see me do here is I'm going to have this in front of what we call iron ball position. I'll have my lead foot placed here and rotated. So you're going to see my foot isn't straight out, it's rotated in my ball position. But you'll notice how narrow my foot is. This is the wedge through 7-iron width. We have 6.5, 4.3 hybrid fairway driver. So as the club gets longer, you're going to see my stance widen. But what you're going to notice here is this ball position will stay in the same place. So relative to my lead foot position, I go wider, but this ball stays in the same place. Now, what's happening, and so as you know I go through this, what's happening is when my body gets wider, when my feet get wider, this shoulder starts going back in my stance. So this is a wedge. This is actually a 52-degree wedge. And you can see a very narrow stance right here at the W, but I'm right on the edge of the W. I'm not going too wide. And this would be a nice 52-degree shot for a very short iron. All right, so keep this in mind that I'm not going to sit there and pound golf balls in front of you today, but I want you to really understand that when the club gets longer, we need to have less lean of the shaft. So I want you to understand what I mean by this. So I'm going to grab something a little longer here. This is my 6-iron. Okay, so, and look, you know me, I get into a little bit of detail so you understand what's going on here. When I have a wedge, in order for me to hit the center of mass, on the center of mass of this and compress the golf ball, notice this shaft is straight up and down. This is 90-degree angle. That's the way the club is built, at 90 degrees. But I cannot strike this golf ball and hit the center of mass of this wedge face with the center of mass of this ball if I don't have shaft lean. So I have to have compression to lean the shaft. I have to lean the shaft forward to hit, because there's loft on the club. And the center of mass of this golf club is high on the face. So I've got to have more lean. So in order for me to get more lean in the club, you could say, well, Todd, get your hands more forward, but that's not the answer. If I want more lean in this shaft, simply have a narrow stance, and look what happens. My shoulder's far enough in front to produce lean. Okay, so the narrow stance allows for more lean. Now let's grab that 6-iron again. A 6-iron requires less lean of the shaft. So in other words, where that wedge, let's say you need 8 or 10 degrees of lean, this thing needs 5 or 6. So now I only need 6 degrees of lean. Well, what happens if I have my stance too narrow like I did with that wedge, and I get 8 or 10 degrees of lean, it's going to de-loft the 6-iron too much. Plus, I can't swing it quite as fast. So you got two problems. The ball's gonna go too low, I don't get the trajectory, and maybe this is your problem, you're not hitting the ball high enough because your stance is too narrow. So watch what happens. So instead of that wedge width, I'm gonna go to a 6-iron width, and look what happens when I do this. It puts me more behind the golf ball. So it puts my shoulder more back. And now when I get to impact, look what happens. I have less lean. So this would be a wedge. This is a 6-iron. And so by adjusting my trail foot width, it's creating less lean or more lean in the shaft. So each club that you hit is a trail foot movement to get the proper angle at impact of the golf club. Watch this though. And because here's what I tell people a lot. Everything I'm doing here, I'm not moving the foot and the ball. So this is staying consistent. See, this is consistent. The lead foot and the ball are consistent. I'm just making a slight adjustment here. So I can hit it even higher with a 6-iron, because if I put my 6-iron width to 4-iron or 3-iron or hybrid, look what happens. Now it's gonna hit a very high 6-iron, not as much lean. If I had it where a wedge width would be, I deal off the 6-iron, now I hit a low 6-iron. You see how I'm changing the trajectory of this 6-iron with my stance width as well. So the key that I want you to understand though is I'm staying consistent with the ball position relative to my lead foot. That's what's so important about this. So now that you kind of understand why you're seeing me adjust stance width for every club I'm hitting, because the club requires that. Let's go one step further here. Let's go take the driver out. And let me put a ball up here. Now, what you're gonna see, now the ball's on a tee, it's above the ground. So this was iron ball position here when I was compressing it off the ground, right in front of iron ball position. Now I'm launching it, so you're gonna see the ball go slightly forward because it's coming up, out of the ground, in other words. So it's coming out of the ground. Now watch, I'm gonna keep my lead foot where it was, and I'm gonna go really wide. And look what happens now. You see where the shoulder, if this was a wedge, that was a wedge, right? No way you can hit a driver like that. You're gonna de-loft it. Okay, so I'm gonna go 6-iron, still not enough loft, it's still gonna go too low. Watch what happens, I'm gonna go to driver width, and look what happens, the shoulder goes back. And now with a driver, I'm in a position where I'm launching the golf ball. See how the club's coming up. Notice I did that two ways. The ball's on a tee, has to be more forward because the club is coming up, and I'm helping the club by getting my stance width. Now I'm in what I call launch conditions with the driver. But it's the lead shoulder is getting placed in a position. Why? Because this club is designed to be hit like this or slightly this way. It's not designed to be hit like this. You don't need to lean a driver. So this is what gets really interesting, because I think people, most of the time what they're doing is they're sitting up too narrow with the driver, and they're having to back up to hit it. See, they're having to go backwards to hit it, trying to create less lean of the shaft. They have to lean the body more. What I'm doing is I'm putting the body behind the golf ball and keeping the shaft where it should be. So that's what a driver would look like. Stance is pretty wide. I'm already well behind the golf ball. Look how easy it is to get that shaft where I want it. And a driver looks like this. So you're seeing what's happening down here is I'm adjusting my body position, leaving the lead foot where it's at, and getting the shoulder adjusted correctly, all right? So let's hit a few shots. Go through the bag here. I'm gonna grab a wedge. This is just a pitching wedge. And we'll go through, I'll go pitching wedge. We'll go pitching wedge, 8-iron, 6-iron, 3-wood driver. How's that? I'm gonna put these on the ground here so you got them. So pitching wedge, 8-iron, 6-iron, 3-wood driver. And then we'll see how all those clubs play themselves out. Okay, here's the wedge. So wedge, ball position staying here, foot position staying there. Wedge stance width is a full swing with the wedge. Feels pretty narrow. See, takes a divot. Compression, see, if you're not taking a divot, then that might be one of the reasons your stance is, the ball position's not in the right place, lead foot's not in the right place, and maybe your stance width is too wide, you know? So, okay, 8-iron needs less lean with an 8-iron, still has some lean. So now lead foot position stays there. I'm gonna go a little wider here with my trail foot. Now, this is an 8-iron. Okay. 6 iron. Less lean with the 6 iron. I don't need as much shaft forward position. Lead foot stays in position. I'm gonna go a little wider with the trail foot. Now I like to keep it just on the inside of the foot. I tend to go wider than more narrow because I want to get the ball in the air and loft it a little bit. So nice 6 iron position. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting with the 3 wood. Let's go hybrid. You guys will hit hybrids. I want to do a hybrid real quick. So this is a 18-degree hybrid. So this is basically a 2 iron. I'm going to put it at iron ball position. Stance width is everything with the hybrid, because if I get my stance too narrow, I de-loft this thing like crazy. So I'm going to go, I have an H here for hybrid. And notice now that ball looks pretty far forward, and this is a little hybrid here. So again, pretty wide with a hybrid. It's almost a 3 wood, but ball feels pretty forward because my stance is wide. There's a nice hybrid, about 210 or 15 yards, okay? Had to throw that hybrid in there for you. All right, people have trouble with the 3 wood. Now, a 3 wood's one of those no man's land, because you don't want to necessarily hit down on it, but you also don't want to hit up on it. That's why people have trouble with the 3 wood. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put a little reference down. This would be my driver ball position right here. This is my 3 wood ball position, and this is my iron ball position. Okay, so I want you to take a look at that. There's a zone here between this ball and this ball. That zone is where the club is on its way to the bottom and coming up. This is where a 3 wood needs to be struck, somewhere in that area right there. Now you can hit it from back here where the iron is. The problem is it's going to be hit down just a little bit, okay? So I don't like to hit my 3 wood down too much. So you're going to see me hit a 3 wood from that position right there. On the trainer, I have what I call the zone, the O. In the zone is where I like to hit this 3 wood from. Again, stance width really matters on this. Lead position. There's my nice wide, it looks pretty wide, almost driver width, but look at the ball position, it's not too far forward. There's a perfect 3 wood, about 240. Okay, and now last one is driver. I would say the 3 wood is probably the one that's the most tricky for people, because now if it's on a tee, you might move it slightly up, but it's not on a tee, it's sitting on the ground. And you got this 15-degree or 14-degree club, so very low lofted, almost driver lofted club. So you want to hit kind of at the very bottom of the arc, not compressed and not swinging up. That's why 3 wood gets so difficult for people. Okay, driver. On the trainer here, I have P for driver ball position. So I like to have it in the P. That puts it just inside this foot. Now, I'll make sure this stance is nice and wide. Now, this is putting me behind the ball, so I'm getting to a launch position here. So that's where I like to have the driver, and here's a nice driver swing for you, nice wide stance. So what you're seeing here is stance width and ball position are fully related. And the reason is because lead shoulder. Let's reiterate this real quick. So look what happens when I start moving my foot. My shoulder starts going backwards. That allows me to have less lean in the shaft or more lean in the shaft, depending on the club I'm hitting. I keep the ball in the same spot with almost every club, except 3 wood and driver, where I need to hit it slightly on the upward motion. That's basically it. I'll finish off with this. If I was going to take, and be careful with this because this is an 8 iron, but let's say somebody says, Todd, how do you hit a low 8 iron? I would say, well, hit a 7 iron or 6 iron. But let's say you do want to hit a low 8 iron. Let's say it's 8 irons a club you want to hit. I would keep it in normal ball position. Do not put the ball back. And the reason you don't want to put the ball back in your stance is because there's a circular path of the club. There's an arc happening. And what's happening with the arc is now that if you put the ball back, so let's say I move the ball back in my stance, now it's back here towards my trail foot, the arc is affecting where the face angle is. So now the face is open coming into that arc. And so what you try to do, you try to square the face of that arc and you end up hitting it left. So don't move the ball position. Keep the lead foot in position, keep the ball in position, and then what I want you to do is simply narrow the foot. And when you narrow the foot, what it does is it effectively moves it more behind the shoulder. And here we go. So now I have a 8-iron with the ball feeling back because it's too narrow for an 8-iron. I will get more lean in the shaft, and that ball comes off really low. And you can see how steeply it's hit, and that's because it's a long club with lots of lean. So if I wanted to do the opposite of that and hit it higher, what would you do? Widen the foot slightly. So my 8-iron now, I'm going to go slightly wider. Now I'm in my 6-iron range. This is a wide 8-iron stance, but it puts me more behind the golf ball. And that's sounded better, but that's more up in the air for a high lofted 8-iron. So you're seeing, that's why we use this trainer. I recommend that you keep the ball position simple. I don't like too many moving parts in my training aids, so I built this. And keep in mind, all the training aids that I built for myself to train Moe Norman swing. When I was working with Moe, I was learning from him and designing training aids around mastering his movement. This was one of them. So now we actually sell the product, but I designed this for myself so I could carry it in my bag, pull it easily in and out of the bag, throw it on the ground, move it around, kick it around. I didn't want it pinned to the ground because you're taking a divot. And so I make it real easy to change my target alignment, get ball position, change my target alignment, get my ball position. So I like simple training aids, easy to use, carry in your bag, take it anywhere, and I use this almost every single time that I develop my golf swing because proprioceptively, I want to make sure that ball position is correct when I practice. Hope that helps you understand more about ball position, why we teach the way we do with ball position, how it's actually pretty simple, but you got to keep it simple and make it consistent to be consistent. Thanks for joining me. Click the bell icon, give me a thumbs up. I'll see you in the next video.